Welcome, welcome, welcome to our first gathering of 2021. So glad to see all of you, many of you regulars, and many of you, it's just so good to see you back. And we're glad that you could join us again. 2021, y'all. Where to even begin? I posted today earlier on our social media channels this Zora Neale Hurston quote. It's from her remarkable book, Their Eyes Are Watching God. And it says, there are years that ask questions and years that answer. And 2021 seems to already be working overtime and doing both, at least from my perspective. I think there's rich complexity and implications to all that is happening currently in our world. And because of that, and in the midst of that, this is why we gather. We gather here in this space ultimately to remind each other of our inherent magic. And that means every literal thing that exists in the world we believe has worth and value and what we deem as being magical. We want to remind ourselves always of our connection to each other and to this world around us. And finally, and maybe most importantly today, thinking about our responsibility then to ourselves, to each other, and to the world around us. And so this year is already asking us, how can we be accountable to what has transpired? So we gather, we do this every other Sunday almost, or at least twice a month, to remind and to reflect and to encourage and to challenge and ultimately, hopefully, spurring on our imaginations so that we can learn more and so that we can move more intentionally into actions that better us and better the world. So this is why we're here. This is why we do that, what we do, and everything that we do and how we do it has great intentionality. And I hope that you feel that and you sense that and you know that. In preparation, just FYI, you will need a writing utensil today and some paper, or you can use your computer or iPad or whatever your preference. And also, as always, we end with a toast. So make sure you have whatever your preference, water, wine, whiskey, whatever you need and want, but we will end celebrating and encouraging each other to a more full life. But first, we start off with participatory practices, and Chris Hauser is going to lead us off in the first one.
Thanks, Mel. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. We're going to take up some space, each one of us one at a time, to say our name, where we're Zooming from, and what your preferred pronouns are. This is meant to be able to speak and occupy your space with the understanding and the knowledge that some of us take up lots of space and others of us don't take up maybe nearly enough space. And so it's this is an opportunity for us to get to know you. We know most everybody here, but we're really, really glad that you are here. Linda, my wife, is listening and watching, but not participating per se. So I will start. Chris Hauser from Brentwood, he, him, his. Linda does. My wife does not have preference, and I'll call you out. Just unmute yourself, and we'll go right on down the line as far as I see. So first up, Nathan.
Nathan Johns, Lebanon, Tennessee, he, him, his.
Thank you. Melissa.
Melissa Green, Franklin, Tennessee, she, her, hers.
Lauren.
Hey there, Lauren Pilney, Nashville, Tennessee, she, her.
Thank you. Leanne Love.
Leanne Love, Nashville, Tennessee, she, her, hers.
Thank you. Cece, Cindy.
Hi, Cindy Hampas, Spring Hill, Tennessee, she, her, hers.
Thank you. Abby from the great state of Washington.
Hi, Abby Buter, and I live in Tacoma, Washington, and she, her, hers.
Thank you. Sarah Amick.
Sarah, usually from Nashville, but in Missouri with family. So, she, her, hers.
Tassima. Here you go.
Tassima T.C. Warren, she, her, hers, Tampa, Florida.
Alana, welcome. Glad to see you.
I'm Alana business, and my pronouns are they, them.
Okay. Ryan?
Hey, Ryan Greenewalt from East Nashville, and he, him, his.
Thank you. Matt from the great state of West Virginia.
Hey guys, Matt. I'm from Huntington, West Virginia. My pronouns are he, him, his.
Christy?
Hi, I'm Christy from Charleston, West Virginia, and she, her, hers.
Abby Hinton, you there?
Hi, Abby Lane, East Nashville. Also my car, she, her, hers.
Thank you. Leah?
Leah, from my car, but I literally just got home. Nashville, Tennessee, and my pronouns are she, her.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Can you guys hear me? Yay, great. Hi, everybody. So good to see everyone today. It's a struggle for me sometimes to break away on a Sunday, so I'm really happy that I could do that today. The baby is still asleep upstairs. Fingers crossed, stays that way. So for those of you that are familiar with our practices, you'll know that every time we gather, we try to name the good. We start off with a little song. But before we do that, I feel like it's been a broken record as I've led this practice on and off throughout the last year and saying, you know, this week has been so crazy, especially this week we need to name the good. But I feel like I mean it more than ever this week. It's just been a barrage of things, which it's been a joyful week in some ways. I celebrated a birthday this week. I'm back to work this week. And it's been really good in a lot of ways, but man, if you've logged into any kind of news or social media, I'm sure there's just a lot of feelings of being overwhelmed and scared and all the things. So I just challenge everybody, even if you don't want to speak up today, man, just make this a part of your daily practice to look for the good, because it feels insurmountable some days, at least for me. Especially thinking through, I was just telling my husband, Chris, like this year has really challenged my notion of giving people the benefit of the doubt, seeing the best in people. I've had a hard time holding on to that in the last few months. So if you felt the same way, then know you're not alone and know that we'll try to work on that together. So anyways, before we start and I start calling on people, there's a little song that we like to sing called Tell Me Something Good. I prefer that everyone unmutes themselves, so it's as chaotic as possible. And I'm going to count off 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're going to sing Tell Me Something Good all together. Okay, ready? Unmute. Everybody unmute.
Everyone.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Tell me something good.
My favorite. So good. Okay. Tell me something good, y'all. Raise your hand, unmute yourself. Whatever's the easiest. I'll look for you.
I'll go. So my school, we've been really working hard to the last 5 years, basically, of really going through our curriculum and really with that anti-racist lens, trying to really be intentional about our diversity and inclusion and all of that. And finally, we're all on the same page for the most part. And I had a meeting last week where we're finally have this unit down, a colonialism unit that's really, I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of the work we've been doing the last couple of years, and just the impact that will have on thousands of kids and a generation where they're going to get a history that we didn't get. And I know that, a lot of my teachers have been doing it in a silo kind of work, but really now we're all on the same page and it's going out nationally, and hopefully it'll ripple out to other schools is the goal of the work we've been doing the last couple of years. And I think the thing that really spoke to me a lot was when, or just had a huge impact when we started the meeting with my national humanities team, and they led with a land acknowledgement, and that just was really awesome. And that was not by my, my prompting or anything, but just the amount of conversations we've had over the last couple of years and how important we value this work, and just value our kids and what the future for them should look like. So I'm just really excited about my school and the work that we're doing when it comes to being culturally responsive and just a place for all kids to learn and feel safe and, yeah, have a great future.
Oh, dang, that gave me goosebumps, Sarah. That is so cool. I love that. What else? Hey, Alana.
Yes. So a quick backstory before I begin is I have been suffering from an eating disorder for a while. And in 2014, I was over 300 pounds. And since then, I've been getting therapy and help and put on a special diet, diet pills, medication, all kinds of things. And finally, this year, at the end of the year, I reached 235 pounds. So my goal weight is 180, so I'm not quite there yet, but I'm slowly working on getting it down. So yeah, that's my tell me something good.
Great. I'm glad you're feeling good. That's amazing news.
Yeah, I slip sometimes. I have my triggers and everything, but I have like medication now that I can take when I have those triggers. And things like that.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Chris.
I saw someone, a friend, post something on Facebook a couple of days ago with a picture of 5 presidents and a story about Barack Obama in January of 2017 asked George W. Bush if he could pull together all living presidents to have a lunch together to just talk about what it's like being president. And so George Bush Sr., George W. Bush, Jimmy Carter, and Clinton all got together, and they ordered from the mess hall at the White House, and they talked for a couple of hours, and it's just it's an amazing story. And then in the thread, in the Facebook thread, someone else posted the letter that George W. Bush wrote to Barack Obama, and then the letter that Barack actually wrote to Donald Trump. And there's so much beauty and humility and wonder and cheering one another on in those communications. It really is stunning, and it speaks to, even though I've got loads of problems with a number of people in that picture and have campaigned against them and whatever in the past, it really was a profound thing to see that this is possible.
Mm-hmm.
This is possible in America for a peaceful transition of power, and so I'm holding on.
Mm-hmm. Chris, I'm listening to A Promised Land right now. And so I've just been listening to Barack Obama speak for hours and hours and hours over the last week. And man, I know he wasn't a perfect man, but if that has not been a healing balm to my soul, listening to him talk, oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm with you. Ryan.
So a week ago, I guess I think a week ago today, we found out my mom got COVID, and we really have no idea how at all. The family is the only people she's been around. None of us have it. We've all been tested 3 times. Just no idea. And then few days after that, a friend of mine passed of COVID here in town, and so I've just been like really scared and for the past 7 days. And the last couple days she started feeling better. So, you know, I don't know how this works or anything, and I'm almost afraid to like say it out loud, but she's able to eat, her oxygen's fine, you know, like, so there have been some really good, you know, steps happening. She's started to be like annoying, which is great, you know, that she's like strong enough to annoy her son and her daughters. So anyway, I'm just gonna claim that right now as a good thing, and we're gonna keep that momentum moving forward into this next week.
That's right. Good news. We'll take it. We're here with you. Matt.
Mine are actually two, but they're brief and they're group related. One, I'm so glad that we're all together again. I know it's the first gathering of the year. And two, I'm so glad that my friend Christy is here below with us. It's wonderful for her to be here.
Yay. Same on both accounts. Love that. Nathan. Love that slow raise.
No worries. So mine is actually related to Ryan's a little bit, in that the kind of bad news, right, of his mother and having COVID, because she's our nanny. We were supposed to start last week as our nanny. And so, of course, we haven't had her, which has been a huge loss. Our, main hope or wish, right, is for her to feel better and things like that. But this is a really busy time of year for me specifically, but also for Ashley, just at work and stuff like that. And the kids have just been really amazing at letting us, have that time and space and things like that to get stuff done. Not all the time, but most of the time. And so, even though it's been this, it didn't really work like it was, and the week was just nuts anyway with everything that was going on. The kids have just really been amazing with how well they've been able to occupy themselves and leave us alone and just let us get work done. And so I'm really grateful for that.
Great.
And also Ryan sending all the positive vibes your way, your mom's way.
Absolutely. Leanne Love, raised hand. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are.
10 days.
Yes, I had to think about
10 days. That's my thing I'm thankful for. 10 days.
Yep. Same. Melissa.
I just want to piggyback on Matt, I think. Just, it's so lovely. Like, my good is this moment right now. Like, literally seeing all of our faces together, even though we're apart, and knowing that we're all here leaning into the good, like leaning into not just naming the good, but like, how do we better ourselves? How do we figure this out? How do we move forward together? And that energy, like, I feel it. I feel your energy through the screen, and it encourages me and gives sparks light into this moment. So wanted to name it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Abby.
So I had a birthday last week, which was exciting, but I know Lauren did too, and Sarah's is next week. And so just want to celebrate all the great Capricorns in the space, if there's any other ones. But
And Malia's is tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
Great. Yeah. So just fun. It's, amidst all the craziness of just having a regular rhythm, obviously, if your birthday still comes. And so there's just something, I think, in the energy of that regular rhythm and being able to celebrate life and people you love. And so I'm thankful for that.
Love it. Thanks, Abby. Totally agree. Anybody else? Christy.
Hi, this is my second time here. It's been a little while since my first time. But Matt reminded me, and he's actually reminded me a couple times this past week not to forget. And, it's it's good to be part of something a little bit different, especially different than what I'm really used to. So thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, thanks for being here. So good to see you, Christy.
And thanks, Ryan and Christy, for still having your Christmas decorations up. That's cool.
I still have three trees up. And I haven't even started taking anything down. I don't want to.
I don't blame you. Okay. Man, thanks for sharing all that, guys. It's just so nice to hear all of that and to be intentional about this time together. So definitely sparked joy in my day, and it's just so good to be with you all. So lovely. All right, I'll pass it on.
Am I next? I am going to lead us today in our embodiment practice, which I feel like I always have to take a deep breath before doing, because our embodiment practice is a reminder to be here in the moment, in our bodies, listen to our bodies, no matter what is going on around us physically or even inside of us emotionally, just to take a second and be present. So we're gonna take 2 hands, put them next to each other like this, and start with thumb to pinky. We're going to say stop, breathe, know your worth. Okay, now everybody do it together with me. Stop, breathe, know your worth. Again. Stop, breathe, know your worth. And then one last time. Stop, breathe, know your worth. Thanks, y'all. I'm passing it to Nathan.
That's right. Okay, thanks, Leah. So each time that we gather, we include acknowledgments as part of our spiritual practices. And as we consider the events that have happened over the last 4 years, and more specifically over the last week, it's becoming clear that white nationalism and white supremacy are alive and highly active in our society. There's still so much work to be done, but I'm so grateful to be a part of a community that is actively working towards imagining a better world and intentionally making it so. Today, as we set aside time to offer these acknowledgments, let's also be intentional about recognizing that this is merely the beginning of our collective work and not the end. So with that, I'll share our anti-racism acknowledgement. We as a community recognize that white supremacy and systemic racism are an insidious part of our society. Intentional or not, we recognize the harmful impact of its presence in our lives and the impact it has on Black, Indigenous, and people of color members of this community and other communities around us. We commit ourselves to an active practice of anti-racism. We commit to rooting out and addressing racism whenever and wherever we find it, starting within each of us and extending into our communities and the greater world around us. And with that, I'll pass it over to Sarah to share the land acknowledgement.
So our last practice today is the land acknowledgement, where we just take a moment to honor the land, honor the erasure of the indigenous peoples of the land, and knowing that in doing so, by naming that, we are beginning to heal the land as well as heal ourselves as a collective. And so today, if you're in Nashville, we honor the land of the Shawnee and the Cherokee. And I invite you, if you're not in Nashville, to look up who first inhabited your land, and just to be aware and to give thanks for that, and knowing that land is sacred. And also, as we begin this new year, thinking about the rhythms you already have with creation, and thinking about rhythms that you want to maybe continue with creation, or ones that you want to start. But just to be mindful of that, and how we're connected, that we're all connected together. So.
Love that. Thank you, Sarah, and everyone who led practices today. One other suggestion that I just remembered that I saw a friend post about on New Year's Day. Some of you know her, Shannon Carlisle. She posted this practice where every Sunday, her and her wife, but I'm sure it could be, it doesn't have to be a family situation. It could just be you. But every Sunday, basically, they write down something that they're grateful for in this week. So it could be the good that any one of us just named. It could be this moment together, to have community. It could be whatever it is, but they write it and they put it in a jar and they literally collect it all year. And then on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, they take out and read every one of those things that they were grateful for every one of those weeks in the passing year. And then they burn it to ignite. Like, we name our light, we name how good it was, and then we set ourselves free to move into the next year with that same willingness. And so I just want to invite you into that practice today. Maybe that's something that you want to involve in your life or your families. And just as you all were reading, I was like, oh, I want to share that with y'all. So just an aside. Okay, continuing on, we also, as a part of our rhythm and gathering, typically have teaching, a short teaching. And today that's simply going to look like an introduction to our writing reflection time, which a few of us were texting in the midst of the craziness of this week. And I think it was even Nathan that suggested, hey, maybe we could write and reflect together this Sunday. And I loved that idea so much. And then we'll also have dialogue and conversation where we're able to share, and which we believe, and this is so important about, again, talking about everything we do here and how we do it has great intention, but this participatory, the practices that we just did where we're inviting you and somewhat maybe forcing you to participate and to use your voice and to name things. And then also the dialogue and conversation post teaching that happens every time we gather. It has immense power, we believe, to both deepen our relationships to each other, but also that the shedding of light on our shared experiences and realities will also better us. So just please know this is so important. And I know for some of you, it's hard to speak up and speak out at times. And for others, we talk way too much. So we need to back up and give that space, but every bit of it is important. So please know that. Okay, I had to put my jacket on because I was cold. So if you're anything like me, you hoped and wanted and thought at least that maybe 2021 was going to give us some sense of respite from the horrors and the heaviness of 2020. And alas, it has not. And it got me thinking that we often, at least I often in the past, but I think so many of us, we tend to pretend or even have faith that a year holds within it something outside of our own doing and responsibility. Like, we talk about this, like, this year will hold this, I want this to happen in 2021 or whatever year we're facing. And we think that there's some magic in the year in and of itself. And it has nothing to do with us necessarily. We often, as humanity, have tended to blame or trust some outside source or being that they, for instance, are affecting the world or controlling the world. And yet, many of us have found and continue to discover that this idea of a divine being, if you believe in one, but that divine being does not act alone. That divine being does not do things without our participation, and neither then, and thus will this new year that we were so hopeful for. That 2021 does not and cannot act alone. So the real clarity then is not that we need to be dismissive of our hopes and aspirations, nor am I saying we need to be dismissive if you believe in some wholly other. But the clarity, I think, is that we as individuals and as the human family need to be, though, responsible, both to what has caused us to get here and to what we can and need to do, desperately need to do differently to move away from here. And that is so much of what Imaginarium and this space and why we gather, every other Sunday. That's what this is about. So specifically this week, I'm sensing, and I've talked to many of you, And so I'm going to assume that others of you then have felt some kind of rage inside, based off of what you saw and what we experienced through that seeing, although none of us were physically there at what happened at the Capitol. And so that we have to figure out how to channel that rage into healthy and generative ways, to continue to figure out how we are productive in our normal everyday lives. I mean, first of all, it was okay if you got nothing done this week in light of everything. So please know that, and feel that permission, if you will, from each other to say it is okay if you just ate food and watched TV and it was some, crap TV show. It's okay if that's all you did this week. But moving beyond that, how do we channel this rage into now more productive and meaningful work in our lives? I think we also have to allow ourselves to grieve and to feel. And that practice and that process, to Lauren's point, like every week saying, like, more than this, this week more than ever, we need to name the good. Like, we need to do these things. Unfortunately, right now we're in a ritual or a season of continual needing to process things and to feel deeply and to grieve them, because otherwise we will hang on to them and that thing will fester and come out in ways that will be unproductive for us and for the world. So we need to feel and to grieve, and that's an ongoing practice. We must, as Valerie Carr, which many of us just read her book, she so eloquently says, we have to harness this divine rage. We have to, and we have the opportunity to follow the wisdom of so many that have gone before us, so many that are currently speaking, like right now, and leading with wisdom, in order for all of us to choose to rebuild, to remake, or choose to create a new world, a new America, like this new space that all of us, we feel desperately need. But this requires something of us. It requires a shift in consciousness, which many of us are already beginning to be there and trying to continue to tap into that. It requires healing, right? It requires naming the hurt and the pain, either that was caused to us or caused by us. Healing has to happen. It requires learning, and across the board, all of that requires effort, right? It requires effort on our part. So although we don't talk often in this space of the divine, we tend to, wait, how do I say that? I want to name that although we're not a religious space, and we are a spiritual space. We believe that all of life is spiritual, and we're not asking you to be dismissive of anything if you believe in God or the divine. But I do want to name that in this believing that all of life is spiritual and that we are connected, and we name the magic and all of that, that should be something inside of us causing us to want to look and say, what else can I be doing? What else should I be learning? What else should I be open to in this moment? And as I was reflecting on this week of what happened at the Capitol specifically, and the radicalization of groups of people, and thinking about religion and thinking about spiritual communities. And I've realized, and we've discussed this before in our time together, so many of us, but religion at its worst has been proven to be able to sway people, to manipulate people, to encourage people to do, first of all, to have self-harm and self-doubt, but also to do groupthink and to do othering and to cause destruction of both lives and of property, as we saw this week. These people were radicalized, often, probably most of them, by a religion. And so because of that, and in response to that, and thinking like we are also a spiritual community, we are not a religion, we are not a religious space, but we are a spiritual community. And I have to believe then that a healthy spirituality, a healthy spiritual community can in turn then encourage and provoke and promote better ways of thinking and doing. And so our spirituality, that is the things and the practices that animate our lives. A spirituality, what I mean when I say that is our openness, our curiosity, our willingness. Then I think it's an undertapped resource for personal and social transformation that the world so desperately needs. And not just what we are doing here at Imaginarium, but there's a ton of other people doing this type of work across the globe. And for that, I'm thankful. But when so many of our religious spaces have been hurting and harming and tearing people down, and now so many of our civic structures are also hurting and harming and tearing people down, and or they are being torn down, right? Like literally, we watched things being torn apart this week. Those were all religious spaces, civic structures, and spaces. They have often been trying to give us some ideal or sense of belonging, a sense of trust, a sense of safety. And when that is eroding literally in front of our eyes, I think it's forcing us as Americans, and it's forcing us even more so as humans, to find meaning and purpose where there is little or no institutional guidance. And this is where we find ourselves right now. We are in all the ways vulnerable. I believe that, like across the world. And I mean, we are in a time of uncertainty. We are in a time of risk. We are in a time of exposure. And again, as a country and as humanity. And yet, and this is the good news, this is the exciting stuff. And yet we have each other. And yet we are here showing up. And yet we are finding that we have our own intuition and an inner voice that so many of us have silenced for so long and never listened to. And yet we're continuing to find that there are powerful voices that for many reasons have been quieted, that are speaking wisdom into America right now, and have been for years and years and years. And so many of us have dismissed them or not listened. And now we're starting to pay attention. And yet there continue to be sources of influence outside of the silos. We are breaking out, right? Slowly but surely breaking out of our silos, and ourselves learning how to speak up and speak out and act up and act out, get into that good trouble, as John Lewis says. And yet, as we've heard this phrase multiple times, most of us over and over in the last few years, we realize we are the ones we've been waiting for. When I first researched that statement and used it in a sermon 6 years ago, I found that it was from the Hopi elders, that it was a blessing that they spoke. Upon further research, I realized today when I was looking for it again, that someone else said it was first penned by a woman named June Jordan. She was a Black and bisexual woman speaking at the United Nations in 1978. So either way, whichever people group or person that comes from, it is still just as powerful here today that we are the ones we've been waiting for. So with that in mind, I want us to do a writing reflection together. And we're going to take some time and give you some time to write, and then hopefully have some time to share glimpses of what you're reflecting on. And you can share just a tiny bit of it or everything you wrote down. It is whatever your preference. But remember that we learn from each other, and we learn by shedding light on our shared realities. Okay, so first up, I want you just to name and to write how you are feeling in this moment. And for many of us, there may be multiple things that you're feeling, and they may feel opposite, and that is okay. So just name all that you're feeling in this moment as far as your emotions are concerned. I'll also put it in the chat. Give you a couple more minutes. There's 4 questions total today, just for reference. just look up at me as you're finished. Or look up at us, rather. Okay, I think that's mostly everyone. Okay, the next 3 questions, I'm taking the lead from Adrienne Marie Brown, who I've been a fan of anyways, but I read her, I think it's her, it may be they, them, but I think it's her. Correct me if you know, but this is the new book, We Will Not Cancel Us, and Other Dreams of Transformative Justice. I read this, I think it was New Year's Day morning, just it's a short book, but it's so powerful. I underlined so much, but she facilitates often groups around transformative justice, and she offered these 3 questions, and I just think they are exactly what we need to be considering today. So in light of what happened this week, the next question is, before we get on to, before you think about who they were, because we're figuring that out, right? Before we think about what they deserve because of what they did, we want to rush towards punishment often. It's in us to get justice, which we need justice. But the first question is why? Why do you think this happened? Why? And as you were finished, or at least close to finished with processing that why, look up at us. Seems like majority. Okay, third question. So we're asking what we were feeling in this moment, but then moving on to why. Why do we feel like this happened? Talking about what's happening this week in America. The next question is then, what can I or we learn from this? I think it's I and we, not I or. Look up to the group as you're close to finishing. Okay, last question. How can my real-time actions contribute to transforming the situation versus making it worse? How can my real-time contributions contribute to transforming the situation versus making it worse? Okay, as you are, I think mostly everyone seems to be finished. Yeah. Okay, lovely. Um, okay, we want to hear from you, and I think we can be open to if you just want to sort of share glimpses into everything that you wrote, or just answer one of the questions. But I do think again, it's important that we lean in and learn, feel like we are not alone, and more importantly, grow from each other. So, who would like to share any or all your thoughts?
I wanted to make sure Leanne got a moment to speak because Leanne, you're leaving soon, right?
Oh, there she is. Yeah,
And
it's great.
you,
That's a great
you,
point.
Leanne, you always have really smart things to say.
Well, see, I was actually wanting to hear what everybody else said because I know what I think. So, like, I was kind of wanting to, but you know what? I actually think I can stretch it about 5 more minutes. Like, I think I can hang in, but so I can share briefly, but I'd love to hear what other people have to say too, because this has been we're all in this together and we need each other. So, I have every feeling that you could have. I put gobsmacked, flabbergasted, stunned, disbelief, shock, outrage, not shocked, hopeless, despair. And I put hopeful because there are some people that kind of got a clue, like, oh wow, like maybe this is really bad. So I liked that piece of it, that there was some awareness shifting for some folks. That I don't agree with, but maybe they're not horrible human beings. What do I think? Let me get my page big here. I think this has been there. It's been there, and I think that we have a leader who is promoting this worldview and this behavior. And I think that that is bringing it to light. I hope in a way that we can heal it. Some days I feel that way and some days I don't. But I think that, and I also think that so much of this happened because the people were white. And so they were able to go and do things. The rules were looser for them because they were the majority culture. And so that's, kind of my belief, where I'm thinking, what can I do and what can I learn from this? That's so hard. I try to work really actively on, systemic racism and about, owning my white privilege, but I think there's always more work to do. And I think that, I think that there are family members and community members and people that, it's easy to not speak up, say your voice. I think that's part of what can happen. I think that, sharing more, being more, speaking more, having more communities and groups of people of all backgrounds and, race, religion, family status, color, all of the things, more conversations, more listening, but also more active line drawing, right? Like this is non-negotiable, right? Like this is not a like, okay, well, that's your opinion. And then no, we're humanity. We're humans and we should treat each other that way. And then I think that like, how come our real-time actions contribute to transforming? I don't know. Like I emailed everybody on the planet that I could email to impeach Trump was my first start. And then I want to continue to engage in anti-racist experiences as much as possible, trainings and, being in communities of people of all types. And that's pretty much what I got.
So good, Leanne. I was like, wait, you're reading my journal.
Thank you.
So much of what I wrote. We feel it. Thank you for that. Matt, I see your hand. Oh, wait, you're muted. Hold on. There you are.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Sorry, I did the official hand. I'll probably just start doing this from now on. I guess in terms of feelings, I felt everything from frustration to hope. That was kind of one contrast. And everything from fear to love being, because I know, I guess what I would call big R reality, and I know what's possible. the why did this happen? That's actually kind of where I would like to park for a minute. And I'd like to go back to a Marianne Williamson reference when she was in the Democratic primaries. She mentioned, and this is as roughly as I remember the quote, there's like basically there's a dark psychic force of collectivized hatred that this president has tapped into. I fully, completely believe that. Now, I think that those dark psychic forces, if you will, I think they're, and I mean, I grew up in a region and in a county where, you know, a lot of folks, sadly, I think, would share the mindset of those folks at the Capitol. Now, not that they would necessarily go to those means, but this sort of, you know, we're the ones left out, we're the, you know, but I think it all started probably a few decades ago. I think part of it's economic injustice, natural resources being exploited, no investment in economic development. Coupling that, if you couple that with religious radicalization, trying to put very narrow containers on heavy life things like sexuality, like gender and gender roles, you know, containers that are too narrow for those life subjects, right? And then otherizing everyone. I think the otherization of everyone, it all stems, economic injustice, religious radicalization, and otherizing everyone, I think is what this was like, the cyst ripping open what happened on Wednesday. And I'm sorry for rambling out, but
No,
that was where I kind of wanted to park. Yeah.
not rambling. That's amazing. Thank you for all of that wisdom.
Thank you.
It feels very true. Who else would like to share? Lauren, saw your hand first.
So in terms of what I/we can learn about what's happening, the term that kept coming to me was restorative justice, but not so much in the traditional sense of like how we think about prison reform and like the big restorative justice. Like I'm thinking about when I see these people that are filled with so much hatred and rage and pain, it makes me feel like there's just generations of rage and pain in their families and how their parents treated them when they were growing up, and just this cyclical hatred. And the biggest lesson I feel like I'm learning right now is that people, especially like the angry white male, need a better toolkit for how to handle their pain and their anger. Like I literally just feel like there's so many people that don't even have a starting place for what to do with that anger and that rage when it rises up. Like people are just never taught what to do with it. And I think about, you know, when I'm raising a daughter, how I want to teach her to handle her anger and rage. And when she feels like she's been, you know, wronged, like it's not that. Like that's not how we handle our anger. Like we don't storm a building, we're not violent, like all that. So I don't know, I walk away just feeling like people need education. Like they need support, they need a toolkit for how to manage all of that. And that's how I'm thinking about the collective lesson. And then my lesson for myself was really around like, what can I do individually? Right now, I feel like the most I can do is create beauty and healing for others. And also reminding myself, like scrolling, reading, taking inventory of all this chaos does not mend the chaos. Like that is a constant lesson. Like knowing what's going on doesn't make those things better. So while it's good to stay informed and educated on what's happening, like I need to get myself out of the habit of doing that all day long and not doing anything positive with my day. So yeah, those were my big reflections during this time.
Great reminders and great challenges for us. Thanks. Alana, I think you raised your hand.
Yes. So I guess what I'm feeling is overwhelmed. by what I saw. I'm shocked. I feel sad because it was my race color that did it. And so for that, I kind of feel in a way responsible because even though I wasn't a part of it, I'm still a part of the race. So it includes all of us. It's not just that group of people. It has to do with all of us. It reflects all of us, and different people of different orientations and colors. They look at us and they think of it as a whole. So I'm scared as well, being transgender, that there's that much hatred that I'm going to face from those types of people. But at the same time, and I also feel vulnerable just because, you know, in the follow up to scared, but I feel hopeful as well because I do feel like there's a change coming a little bit, at least. I mean, at least we're getting a new president, so that makes me feel more hopeful. Um, why I think this happened is just plain hatred, a lot of it. Um, Bad education. I was never taught racism in school. I was never taught anything. I was not taught about Martin Luther King. I was not taught about. I didn't even know there was a Roe versus Wade. So I didn't know any of that, any of that kind of thing. So I think bad education is a lot of it. Poor examples of the past. People look at that and it just they kind of live there, and they don't. And of the Trumps of just the lies that Trump has told, things like that, and privilege would be another one. Just doing something because you feel you can. Um, and then what can I learn from this is that racism has never died. It's always been there. It's just kind of been in the background what we couldn't see, and or we were refusing to see, or we kept making excuses when we saw it. Um, um, Hate will always exist, so we'll always have to fight against it. Uh, and what I learned from this is just to be a better person and be more active in the change, educate myself, go to seminars, anything I can do, and so I can be the change that must occur. And how my actions can help is to be more outspoken and reflect the example of unity out in the open and to I'm not harboring any hidden negative feelings. Um, and admit to my mistakes when I make them, and to be humble in that, and to not find corrected if I and just to admit that I have done wrong in some way. So that's what I all we've seen all this. So
Great.
yeah,
Thank you so much. So much wisdom there, Alana. Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing.
yeah.
Who else? Tassima, I see your hand.
I'll go. What am I feeling? I don't want to say vindication, but I saw this coming. Oh, this movie came down the elevator. This was, but I'm disillusioned, even though I saw it coming. Um, Guess that's what I'm feeling at this point. But I also have I guess, a sobered hopefulness in the sense that I'm hopeful, but I know history, and I know history. Um, it's just history past this prologue, so I'm not too optimistic just yet. Um, Why? Um, just the myth of exceptionalism, myth of American innocence. Um, that this is for me, from my history, this has always been us. So it's, again, if you know history, you look at the signs, you see the signs. This is who we've been. But like others have been saying, there have been points and inflection points where it doesn't have to be. We just have to decide which way we want to go.
Mm.
Let's see. What have I learned from this? For me, coming out of, I will say, predominantly white Christian spaces, I was hopeful while I was there, because I do believe that there is a place and a time for that hope. But I also realize that not one group has a they're not necessarily going to say what theology is. So I have been going back to my roots, back to the Black church, going back to how do I live in this? So for me, that looks like talking to my aunts, talking to my elders. Because for me, it looks like we might be going back to that if we don't change course in a way. So how do they live through this? How do you go to work every day knowing you work with people that really don't see you as equal, honestly, because they've proven themselves that way. And yet you have to work, you have to feed your family, you have to do what you need to do. So what does that look like? How do you continue on and still maintain your magic, your dignity in the face of? So how can my real-time contributions go for making it better? The fact that I'm here, honestly, because there's a little part of me that did not want to do this today. Honestly, really didn't. But I'm here, so that's my contribution.
And it's more than enough. So thank you, Tassima. Thank you for all of that. All right, who else? Christy.
Okay. I have a little anxiety about this, but and Matt knows me well. We've had a lot of good talks, but I'm a recovering Republican. I came home from Iraq in 2004 and voted for Bush, and I never regretted that. I've never been a fan, voted for, nor supported the current president. I kind of saw this coming. A lot of the people that I'm surrounded by are very conservative. My family, my husband, my friends, but we're not hateful people. And so I felt very conflicted, very angry, but still I feel very hopeful. I'm very pleased with the way Pence handled things. I'm very pleased with some of the comments that I'm hearing from both sides. And I'm really hoping that, as horrible as this past week has been for a lot of us, I'm hopeful that this will open up some change and some dialogue and make things better, bring people a little bit closer together. As for why this happened, there's a lot of fear. And there's a leader out there who says what people want to hear. And you have a lot of very believable fiction.
That's good.
And I think that's, you know, that's kind of the thing, the believable fiction. There's just a little bit of enough nugget of truth in some things that makes all the big stuff seem valid. And it does give people hope, and it does give them anger. And I think that's what brought this about. But what can we learn? I mean, I'm still struggling with that. I'm learning to reach out to people who aren't like me and learn from them. I hope that people can learn from me. But the one thing that I can do to fix things is maybe help people understand so that we can fight it and to not perpetuate the hate. I think that's the key is, you know, from both sides. You see a lot of anger and hate and vitriol from just the far left and right, that I just want us to all be happy. And I want to do what I can to help.
Love it. Thank you,
That's all I
Rob.
got.
Chrissy, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. It means so much. Anybody else want to share? Nathan.
So like so many other, I have sort of felt the gamut of emotions. I think at this point in time, most of what I'm feeling is sort of hope for what happens on the 20th and beyond, but also just a severe anxiety for what is or could happen between now and the inauguration, and honestly for the inauguration itself. As for the why, I would say, I think to me it is, America has sort of always been this scrappy country. Like it's even in the Hamilton song, right? You know, young, scrappy, and hungry. And so the kind of, that's been really positive in the sense of, as a nation, we've grown into be, you know, like an economic leader and some other things like that. And there's some awful things that, you know, associated with that. But in sort of getting there, that was good. But the flip side of that is we never take the time to acknowledge or name our transgressions. And so as a result of that, like, it's not just like, I think, you know, certainly President Trump has had a lot to do with like what happened last week, but I think there's been decades, if not centuries, of orchestration at a political level to create an environment in which like two people at the bottom were pitted against one another. That is to say, like poor whites and slaves coming out of the Civil War. And as a result of that, like it is just, it's continued to fester over the years. And we've never looked back and said, this is what happened. We don't teach it in the history books. We don't teach it in schools. Like there's just never been this acknowledgement of that. And so I think that's, to me, is like what I see as kind of the root, right, of what somewhat of behind these types of things. In terms of what, you know, I can learn or we can learn from all of this, I think for me it's all about slowing down and not necessarily jumping to the right, like let's, you know, get these people because they got us, or let's go and, you know, I think, you know, Christy, you referenced the like some of these people are good people, but there's been a lot of stuff that's thrown at them. And so like, rather than sort of doing this us versus them, you know, immediate type of thing, I think that we need to like take a breath, right? Slow down and just, I really think until we are willing to to acknowledge and name what we as a country have done wrong, that I just don't know that we're going to be able to heal from this. Like, I think anything we do right now is just putting another Band-Aid on.
Yeah.
And that's just not been successful. And Sorry if that sounds like I'm being a downer, but that's just where I'm at. And then in terms of like the real time, like actions can contribute to transforming the situation rather than make it worse. I think for me, it's the part of it is simply being able to move beyond my own personal fear and anxiety associated with where we're at. I think Alana referenced the vulnerability, that feeling of vulnerability, and I think I feel that too. Like, and I'm, there's no reason for me to feel that in terms of like the various marginalized communities. But for whatever reason, I just feel this like Alana said, like a real sense of vulnerability right now. And so I think, kind of working to move beyond that, acknowledge it, and then just looking for ways and opportunities to kind of begin to offer a deeper support for that, like Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, and working towards an even more active anti-racist perspective. So
good. Thank you, Nathan. So I keep so much of what I wrote down was what so many of you have already articulated. So I don't want to be redundant, but something I keep coming back to as far as the why and also the what we need to be doing now is, and many of you have sort of mentioned it, is this idea of accountability. This idea that I want to keep widening my own circles of compassion to actually be inclusive of all people, right? I really want to do that. But within that, we have to be able to hold each other accountable. And that includes then me naming how I added to us getting here as a part of this nation, as a part of this country, like the things that I have done, the silos I've been a part of. But also holding deep accountability to not just the individuals that were involved in this week, and I believe there needs to be deep accountability, but also to the structures and systems that are in place that caused it and allowed it. I was literally revisiting my, and many of you were there with me, and others of you know my story, but my experience in the church and my last year working in a church, the toxic environment, it had so much to do with there was no accountability. And when people do not have to live accountable to another and they can go and do, or they believe they can go and do what they want, you're being hurt left and right, and you don't even realize it. In many ways you don't realize it. And I think for the white community, so many of us do not realize how we've been harmed. And then obviously people of color groups and various marginalized community are outright harmed in major ways. And all of this was brought to light because of that. So I just keep going back to accountability. How can we hold ourselves and each other accountable and include, my husband kept reminding me, you believe everyone is magical, right? So don't dismiss that in the midst of the fear and the pain and the trauma. But with that said, there's still deep room for, yes, every one of us is magical. This world is magical. And also there are shady and shitty systems at play and people that have bought into those systems that are harming. So I believe in us though. And I mean us, like this beautiful, diverse, not just group of people that's on this call, but humanity. I deeply believe in us. And I think there is an awakening that is happening and continuing to happen in horrible situations. Who said, Leanne, I think Leanne said, like, if there's any good of this week, and I hate to even frame it like this, but some new people are coming awake, there's at least that. So I think we keep showing up and we keep asking questions and we keep being curious about our roles and our place, and we keep figuring out how do we engage, and how, to Lauren's point, and someone else said this too, how do we also choose not to engage sometimes, because it's going to do none of us any good. It's just going to waste our energy. I keep wanting to remind us to include that this is this is a long road ahead and a long healing journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It definitely wasn't going to happen when we shifted from 2020 into 2021 as much as we wanted it to. So inclusive of that long road is, how do we build endurance? How do we remind ourselves and build resiliency? How do we make time for rest? It's got to be all part of the cycle. And how do we lean into each other in the midst of the beauty of our vulnerability and the fear that's there? Oh, and so we keep figuring this out together. Thanks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing. If any of you want to share and you just maybe weren't quite ready or wanting to yet, you can always show up on our closed group community page and share your thoughts there. Again, we learn from each other, so it's lovely to hear from each other. We'll keep doing happy hours every Wednesday. If you want to join us for that, it's just simply touch base in the middle of the week, and we talk about everything from cooking and Chris's hatred of HelloFresh meals and what we watch to keep ourselves, feeling alive and reminded of the beauty. And then we'll have our next gathering is 2 weeks from tonight. And just as a heads up, it's going to be a creative active gathering. We're wanting to do some vision boards, not just for what we want this year to look like for our personal lives, but also for our country, for our space. And so we'd love for you to participate. We'll still have all the practices like we do in the beginning of every gathering, but then we'll have some time together to envision and begin the imagining so we can begin the acting and living into it. Leah, yes, Leah raised her hand. If that was from
Is it too late to share something? I can try to make it quick.
Nope, do it.
It's going to end up being long because that's just how I function, but I'll try to keep it quick. I know a lot of people alluded to this, and I know a lot of people in this group know this, but I feel like it just needs to be said really explicitly that one of the things that we can and should do is listen to Black people, listen to Black women, follow Black women, not just go out and figure out what to do and forge our own way, but is it TT? Is that what you like? Y'all have been doing this and coping with this a lot longer. Well, not longer than we have. We don't have experience dealing with racism directly. And yeah, like we really need to be looking to organizers and leaders and specifically Black women because they're doing the work.
Okay. Love it. Yeah. Do you have anything else? Such a needed addition.
But no.
You sure?
Okay, now I do have one more thing. I was debating whether or not I should say this, but something that surprised me on the question, what can I learn from this, is the power of organizing. Because I don't know, it's really interesting dichotomy for today of what happened on Wednesday, seeing the results of Stacey Abrams and the many other organizers in Georgia and the results of that versus like as much as like the people who stormed the Capitol should not be people that we look up to in probably any other sense of the word, but they accomplished a lot. And yes, anyways, they didn't just randomly all show up. Like they organized, they had help. So yeah, like organizing and that is part of what the mystery of all of this is for me. Like even Nathan, what you were saying, like coming to grips and actually owning the sins of our nation and how we are an economic powerhouse because of the way that our country used Black people as an economic workforce as opposed to treating them like people. And like, I think all of us individually can own it. Ooh, okay. Begin Again by Eddie Glaude Jr. Thank you. I will look into that. And if you want to say more about that, you should do that after. I don't know, but Nathan was saying this, and I'm like, I think all of us individually would say that, but how do we do that as a country? And that's where like the last question really got stuck for me, because it's like, I don't know, what are the things that I can do? Which is why, I don't know, that's kind of why what I got back to was like, find people who know what they're doing and know how to organize and get stuff done. Because the power is in numbers. It's not in individuals, unless that individual is president telling you what to do. Like the power is in numbers. And so we've got to listen and follow to be a part of numbers.
So good. I'm glad you spoke up. Thank you, Leah. TC, do you want to add to that or clarify or tell us about your mention of your book? Oh, wait.
Okay. 2 book recommendations. One, Begin Again by Eddie Glaude Jr. The other one is Unsettling Truth by Soon Ra and Mark Charles. Basically, with that book, they just go through the history of America and just show how the Catholic Church with the Doctrine of Discovery kind of led to kind of everything that we're dealing with here. And again, true, it's power in numbers. You're right. And every time there has been marginalized communities trying to work together, there's been breakup of those coalitions. But I think we're hopefully wiser now, and hopefully we can see it coming.
So good. Thank you. All right, y'all. Let's commit ourselves to each other and to this work. Grab your glass if you have one. And I'm just going to read again from this book, We Will Not Cancel Us by Adrienne Marie Brown. She's a badass. If you don't know of her work, please follow her on social media and read all of her stuff. It's about cancel culture. So this is sort of the closing blessing. We will not cancel us, but we must earn our place on this earth. We will tell each other we hurt people and who. We will tell each other why and who hurt us and how. We will tell each other what to do to heal ourselves and heal the wounds in our wake. We will be accountable, rigorous in our accountability, all of us unlearning, all of us crawling towards dignity. We will learn to set and hold boundaries, communicate without manipulation, give and receive consent, ask for help. Love our shadows without letting them ruin our relationships. And remember, and I love this, remember, we are of earth, of miracle, of a whole, of a massive river. Love, life, life, love. Cheers to all of it and all of you.
Cheers.
Love you all. Thank you for today. We'll post this up on the page so we can revisit each other's wisdom. Come back, join us on Wednesdays, come back in 2 weeks for the next gathering, share with people who maybe need and want something like this. Love y'all. Thank you.
Say bye. Bye.
Bye.